Tulsi Gabbard right here. She says, what's happening on our campuses is a result of our leaders' failure to take on and defeat radical Islamism on the ideological battlefield. In my book, I detail how Islamism, is that am I saying it right? Islamism? She tries to use that word. I mean, it's
I don't
just
even think that is a real word.
Is the greatest threat to our free country and our freedom, peace, and civilization. You can read it in my book here. So she's blaming Islamism. Like that's the greatest threat. And I think that's a form of radical jihad. It's not necessarily Islam itself, if you put the word there, but it's controversial. Listen to what she has to say. This is so sad.
From what we're talking about over at Columbia last night. What are your thoughts when you're looking at that? Again, the NYPD, law enforcement in to save the day, vilified by the faculty, but there was no other choice at the end.
I mean, there's a few layers of issues here, Brian. Obviously, it is first and foremost maintaining the peace, law and order, enforcing the law as we're seeing our police officers do every single day. But the underlying issue that I hope everyone is paying attention to is the violence, anti-Semitism, and the pro-Hamas calls. You hear some of the calls that these kids are doing on these campuses saying, we hope October 7th happens 10,000 times over. They are parroting this radical Islamist terrorist ideology that Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all of these organizations are trying to perpetuate around the world, which is the extermination of Jewish people and a propagation of their radical Islamist rule. They want to establish Sharia law and a caliphate around the world. And that's the short-term and long-term threat that these groups pose to freedom-loving people and civilization everywhere.
Holy cow. I want to put what my friend put. This is Patrick Henningsen, who was on the show. He said, one of the saddest things over the past 7 months has been watching Tulsi Gabbard transform a supposed leader of the American anti-war movement. And that's why I was supporting her in 2020. I thought she was better than Bernie Sanders on a lot of issues. I thought Bernie Sanders was a compromise. I thought she would be better recognizing regime change wars. She was talking about ending these regime change wars. It was one of her rallying cries. But to see this, it's terrible. Into a full-blown neocon pushing religious, sectarian, and defunct PNAC clash of civilizations, imperialist doctrines, and implicity, at least gladly supporting Israel's genocide of the native Palestinian population in Gaza. In terms of moral fails, it's hard to point to a more stark example. All this to say nothing about the absolute constitutional rights of the student demonstrators around our nation who are there to protest against Israel and its U.S. suppliers' shameful ongoing slaughter and genocide in Palestine. They are not pro-Hamas. They are anti-mass killing by the military-industrial complex Tulsi used to feign opposition to. The students' cause is a legitimate as the millions of protesters who took to the streets and campuses en masse opposing the Vietnam War some 55 years ago. The question is, was she always like this, or has she only recently adopted the John Bolton worldview in exchange for a prominent seat at the high table of power? Your thoughts. We'll make this a section 2 as well. Let's make sure we put this in the doc, and we will make a section on
the
this.
John Bolton worldview, but also the Henry Kissinger worldview, right? That's a definite link, and that realpolitik that winners win, and then you can deal with the consequences afterwards. That's where she's coming from now. It's again the Al-Qaeda is a problem, right? The Taliban is a problem. There is a serious
okay, can we stop there for 1 second? It's a problem we funded, we created.
But then the point of calling everyone pro-Hamas because you're anti-war, that is such a straw man argument that is clearly a talking point that's been recycled ad nauseum, and I don't understand why that continues. And it was a little sad to hear that.
Yeah,
from Tulsi.